We will read about the kingdom plantae, chapter 3. So, first in this module, we will read about the algae and about the classification of plants. So, plants which have not a differentiated plant body are called the thallophyta. This is a broad classification in a flowchart. And those which have a differentiated plant body are classified as bryophytes, pteridophytes and phanerogams. Now thallophyta means thallus-like body. So these are the algae and the different types of algae: cyanophyta, chlorophyta, phaeophyta and rhodophyta. And those which have a differentiated plant body, again these are without specialized vascular tissue. Vascular tissue means they do not have xylem and phloem. And those which have a vascular tissue, they are those which have xylem and phloem. So those bryophytes do not have xylem and phloem. Then they are divided into hepaticae, anthrocerota and muci. And those which have vascular tissue, they are divided into those which do not have seeds and which produce seeds: pteridophytes and phanerogams. Pteridophytes are Coleopsida, Lycopsida, Phenopsida and Pteropsida. Then phanerogams are naked seeded plants and those seeds which are present inside the fruits. Again, naked seeded are the gymnosperms and the angiosperms. The gymnosperms are cyanophyta, ginkgos, coniferales and genitales. The angiosperms are those which have two cotyledon dicots and those which have one cotyledon, the monocots. So coming next to the various classification system of plants. This what do you mean by classification system? The arrangement of plants into groups and subgroups on the basis of similarities is called classification. So this was various types of classification came into being, that in which plants are grouped into their similarities. So these are the characters which are used as basis for classification are called criteria of classification. Now these were three types: the artificial classification, the natural system of classification and the phylogenetic system of classification. Out of this, first is the artificial system of classification. This system is based only on one or two morphological characters for the identification of plants rather than their evolutionary relationships. So what happened here? It was the oldest most system of classification in which the scientists, they classified the organisms or the plants on the basis of their morphological characters. Morphological means the outer characters, how the plants looked like. So Aristotle, who is called the father of zoology, was the first to adopt this system of classification, and it is considered the earliest classification system. Then came Carl Linnaeus, the last one, he was regarded as the father of systematic botany. He published the artificial system based exclusively on floral characters. So according to Carl Linnaeus, the classification system of Linnaeus was based on floral characters, on the types of flowers, about the leaf, about the you can say the various holes of the flower, like petals, stamens, gynoecium, etc. This system is very convenient for the identification of plants. He presented his classification system into two books, Species Plantarum and Genera Plantarum. He established the binomial nomenclature. Binomial nomenclature, you all know this, that the organisms have given two names. One is the genus name and another one is the species name. So that was also given by Carl Linnaeus. Now the natural system of classification. This is based on the number of characters. John Ray collected a number of plants and animals and worked out a number of groups for them. What were the salient features of this? It is based not only on the reproductive organs and morphology, but also many more possible characters to classify them. So George Bentham and Joseph Dalton Hooker, they classified plants based on original study of specimen. They published their scheme in the Genera Plantarum. So salient features were that it was based only, this was based not only on morphology but also on the reproductive organs. Okay, so Bentham and Hooker, they classified the various specimen in this way. Then came the phylogenetic system of classification. It was introduced by Engler and Prandtl. The organisms were classified based on their evolutionary relationships, that means who was their ancestors. And it was, they started with simplest flowering plants and ended with the most complex floral structures. So it was the best system of classification. The phylogenetic system of classification. According to this classification, again, systematics, so according to the organisms which we are reading now are according to the phylogenetic system of classification. Now coming to classical and new systematics. Systematics before the time of Linnaeus is called classical systematics. So systematics means classifying organisms according to the various, according to their morphological or their physiological or their sexual characters. Okay, so systematics after the time of Linnaeus is called new systematics, and the one which is before Linnaeus was called the classical systematics. Now what are the various features of classical systematics? It was species were considered wholly discrete and the work of creator. That means they were these were ones which could not be which we could not work upon. Okay, so they could not be related with each other. They were unique ones. Little emphasis was laid on evolutionary relationship, and classification was based on morphological features only. So they came to the new systematics, in which species were considered related to one another. Now they were not discrete, but they were related, and they were the work of gradual modification. That means adaptation. It confirmed the fact of evolution, and it reflected phylogenetic relationship of organisms. It used scientific methods and statistical data to determine the primitiveness of the species. So then come the forms of new systematics. What are the various forms of new systematics? There are many more, but three main forms: the morphotaxonomy, cytotaxonomy, and chemotaxonomy. Morphotaxonomy was based upon the structural features, cytotaxonomy on the cytological studies of the cell, including the size, structure, and number of chromosomes. Chemotaxonomy was based on the protein and serum, that is the chemical composition of the organism. Now we will talk about the alga from the various from our hierarchy of classification of plants. The lowest one, alga. Alga are ones which do not have a body form. They do not have root, stem, or leaf. That is why they are called thallus-like. So they come under the thallophyta. So characteristics of alga are that they range in size from microscopic to single-celled organisms. That means they are very small in size to very large weeds. They are autotrophic, all of them. They form the reproductive structures that they have the reproductive structures are gametangia, and or they have the gamete chambers. Aquatic they are, and they have a flagella at some point of their life. They contain pyrenoids, chlorophyll, which are actually these chloroplasts in this alga are called pyrenoids. Okay, the small organelles that synthesize and store starch. Absence of embryonic stage, they do not have an embryo. Then what is the structure is a thallus, and they are unicellular, colonial. They can be unicellular, they may be colonial, filamentous, and multicellular. So this is about the structure. Then identifying the types of alga, you can see here the various types of alga, the volvox, then the spirogyra, then these are the long ones which we call as a chlorella, etc. And this is another type of alga. But then classification of alga, three phylum based on, they have three phylums. That is, one is red algae, brown algae, and the green algae. So based on their color. Then types of the chlorophyll they have. There is three types of chlorophyll: chlorophyll A, B, C, and D, four types. Then food storage substances, what type of food they store, and the cell wall composition. Talking about the reproduction of the algae, they reproduce sexually and asexually. The reproduction, mostly they reproduce asexually because environmental stress do not allow them to reproduce sexually much. Then sexual reproduction is by meiosis, by zoospore. Meiosis means the chromosome number reduces into half. Then zoospores, plus and minus gametes are formed, and then zygospores are formed. Okay, so after meiosis zoospores are formed, then gametes are formed, then zygospores are formed. Reproduction in multicellular algae, by oedogonium reproduction. Anthridium release flagellated sperms that swim to the oedogonium. So anthridia are the male ones which release sperms, and they float or they swim to reach the oedogonium or the female sperm. Okay, female cell or the egg cell. Oedogonium houses a zygote, which is a diploid spore. Now oedogonium will become zygote when it will be fertilized by the sperm. The sperm undergoes meiosis and produces 4 haploid zoospores. So when the sperm will undergo meiosis, I told you it will form zoospores, and one of the 4 cells becomes root-like hold fast, other divide and become a new filament, and then they divide. So this is a hold fast where the algae holds itself to the substratum. Then Sparogyra reproduce sexually by conjugation. So it is that conjugation we have read last in fungi, that how the two cells, the two hypha cells come in contact, and either a zoospore is formed, or it is that the whole of the two of them form a new type of zoospore. So in that way it happens. Vulva reproduce by alteration of generations. Two distinct multicellular phases are there. One is haploid and another one is diploid. Haploid means having half the number of gametes. Diploid means 2n number of gametes. The gametophyte is haploid and sporophyte is diploid. Gametophyte is one which bears the gamete. After the gametes are born, then they fuse and they form the sporophyte phase. That means the sporophyte plant is formed, which is a diploid. Then come to the first type of algae, that is phylum Chlorophyta. The green algae, it is also called. 7,000 diverse species, and biologists reason that green algae give rise to land plants. Both green algae and the land plants have chlorophyll A and B, as well as carotenoids. So they have walls made up of cellulose. Their cell wall is made up of cellulose. Economic importance of the green algae, it's important. They are food yielding. Many green algae like chlorella, alva, Caulerpa, Enteromorpha, etc. are used as food. They contain 20% lipids, 50% proteins, vitamin A, B, C and K. Then they are also used for making antibiotics. They are used for sewage disposal, and they are also used for producing oxygen during space flight trips. So sewage disposal, they produce oxygen and they take in carbon dioxide. Coming to the phylum Phaeophyta, 1500 species of brown algae. Phaeophyta are the brown algae. So they are very long. You can see the kelps are also there. Okay, mostly marine and include seaweed and kelps. All are multicellular and large, often reaching lengths of 147 feet. They are mostly marine. Individual algae may grow to a length of 100 meter. Used in cosmetics and ice creams. Here you see the economic importance as food. They are used as food and fodder. Then alginic acid. This alginic acid is a phycocolloid extracted from giant brown algae or kelp. It is used to make alginate. This alginate is used for making pills. You remember some pills are soft. So like our vitamin E capsule, they are soft. They are made up of this alginic acid. Okay, alginates, ointments, surgical threads, etc. are made up of alginic acid. They dissolve. Rich source of soda, potassium, iodine. Medicines are used to make anticoagulants, vermifuge and antibiotics also. Then phylum Rhodophyta, that is the red algae. It contains 4,000 species. Mostly they are marine. They are brown algae and are often found at the depth of 200 meters. They are down in the sea. They contain chlorophyll A and C, and as well as phycobilins. These are also pigments which are important in absorbing light that can penetrate deep into the water. They have cells coated in carrageenan, which is used in cosmetic, gelatin capsule and some cheese. As I told you, gelatin capsules. So the economic importance, coming to food and fodder. Many red algae are edible, like the Porphyra, chondrus and rhodymania. Phycocolloids, that is agar, carrageenan, funori, are obtained from red algae and are used in microbial works, stabilizers, thickened jellies, in puddings, etc. Carrageenan is an emulsifier. Emulsifier, like we say, emulsifier means breaking something. Okay, it is used for breaking something. Funori is a glue which is used in textile and paper industry. Bromine is also obtained from some red algae. Medicines for treatment of kidney, bladder and lung diseases, worm infection, etc. are obtained from some red algae. So this is the end of the chapter, and so hope you understood everything. Go through it once again. Thank you.